Jonathan Pogash is the cocktail guru, a mixologist and hospitality expert.
See? Yeah. You know big words. Dude, I'm the cocktail guru. Cheers.
Jeffrey's his dad, a wine and spirits author, historian, and consultant.
Oh, I do my homework.
With decades of experience, they're always looking for the next big thing. Join this father and son duo for a few laughs as they explore the hottest trends in hospitality with the service industry's leading trailblazers and tastemakers. Welcome to the Cocktail Guru Show.
Dad, I really like the cowboy hat there.
Well, thanks, John. I've been waiting for an excuse to wear this hat. You know, I've had this for probably 20 years, and it's brand new because I never wear it. Never.
Is that the one that you got in? Did you get that in Colorado?
Aspen, Colorado,
Of
at
course.
the famous hat shop in Aspen.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it's a very impressive hat shop, and they did.
You probably got it. Well, you were working for a brand at that point, so you didn't have to pay for it. But I believe those are a gajillion dollars.
I was working for an importer at the time who shall remain nameless, although I loved the company dearly. And the head of the Colorado state, the state manager for Colorado, decided he was going to buy, with his budget, hats for every member of the team. There were, oh gosh, I don't know, there had to be like 60 or 70 of us there, maybe even a few more.
Those were the days.
And he said, he sent a message and said, just go to the hat shop, you know, have your head measured, have them put a brand on the hat with your initials, and it's on me.
Wow.
And we did. We all did that. We all walked it. So that's so we could distinguish ourselves from all the other people walking around the Aspen Food and Wine Festival. And
of course.
Shortly after that event, a new president came onto the company, and he didn't really appreciate that particular purchase of hats.
So they put the kibosh on the those freebies. But speaking of hats, do you see my hat?
I do see your hat.
And it's a Cocktail Guru baseball cap, which is, believe it or not, by happenstance, available on our shop at thecocktailguru.com. So it's never too early for holiday gifts or post-holiday gifts.
It's part of the Cocktail Guru schmeiss.
The schmeiss.
Yeah, okay. Yes.
Yeah. That's Yiddish. Is that Yiddish for like
like
novelty items or but schweiss? Well,
but it's not free.
It's not free, and it also schweiss kind of to me feels like it's not useful stuff.
Oh no, not at all. Schmeiss can be very useful. So, but the reason I'm wearing my hat today is because we all have a little wanderlust in us, do we not? We all have a little gypsy, hint, little gypsy in us.
Yes.
And that sense of adventure, that sense of spirit, the sense of exploration is something that I love and cherish. And that's why I'm thrilled that we're having this particular episode today featuring Whiskey JYPSI. Very exciting.
Hello, we have our special guests, Raj and Ari. Hey.
Two very special guests, including Raj, who is the co-founder of this entire company and whiskey making endeavor, and Ari, who is the whiskey maker for JYPSI whiskey or Whiskey JYPSI, whichever way you want to call it. And both are distinguished guests, and we're thrilled to have you on board, and we welcome you to the Cocktail Guru Show. Thank you, Jeff.
We appreciate it. Thank you for having us.
You're
really
welcome.
Excited.
This is an incredible project with a fellow that most people out there probably know very well, Eric Church, the country singer, songwriter, incredible guy. I've been listening to his music for a very long time and love him. And now the two of you and Eric Church are involved in this very interesting, innovative whiskey making project. Can you tell us something about this and how it came
before,
about?
hold on one second. Hold on one second. I just want to say that I don't know if I ever met Eric, but I was working on Kenny Chesney's rum when
Blue Chair.
Blue Chair Bay. So I was their initial master mixologist, and so I went on a couple of tour dates with the whole gang, and I believe must have been Country Fest in New England at the Patriots Stadium, where I believe Eric Church plays that venue as well. So there's a little connection. That was years ago. That was almost 10 years ago.
Well, it's funny you say that. There's actually a connection with Kenny and why we're in this. So I'm happy to tell you how this all started, if that's where you want me to start with. Sure. So so I met Eric on a golf trip that a mutual friend of ours organized, and Jeffrey, unlike you, didn't listen to country music. I did as a kid. My father would play Johnny Cash and some other music, and we actually watched Hee Haw, which I think everybody watched back then.
Oh,
but
yes.
For whatever reason, I moved, musical genres. The 80s kind of killed my musical taste, I guess. And didn't really know who he was, but my friend kept insisting he's a big music star, big star. And so we went on this trip, and I just treat him like anybody else, and he's just a very solid human being. He's just a good guy, and we had a great time. We bonded, and over a lot of late night drinking, and we were kind of picking each other's brains on our different careers, and how he got to where he was, how I got to where I was, and we started talking about my businesses, and then I started asking him about whiskey because he mentioned the Jack Daniel's partnership, and he said I'm only the second person ever to have my name on a bottle. Frank Sinatra was the first, and this is another trip. But I said, well, out of curiosity, did you ever think of doing your own brand? And he said, it's really funny you say that. George Strait and Kenny Chesney keep telling me I should do this. And, they've been really pushing me to start my own brand. And he said, what do you know about it? I said, I don't really know a lot. I mean, I know the products that I like. But I said, I've got a good buddy named Joe Magliocco who owns Michter's. Let me text him and see if he can give us some ideas. And so I texted him, he called back in 15 seconds, and I talked to him for about an hour. And his advice was, don't do it. It's a very tough.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well,
Right.
It was good advice.
It's good, solid advice.
It was good advice. This is a very, very hard business to break into. And you look at the systems kind of stacked against small producers in terms of the 3-tier system. It's very hard to break into this. So, but after a while, I just kept picking Joe's brain. I realized I knew some folks who were the ex-chairman at High West, and I just kept calling some people, and I didn't think anything of it. Eric called me after the trip a couple times, and then my friend kept pestering me. I was at a Little League game. He said, hey, did you call Eric yet? I said, no, I haven't. He said, well, he's really interested in learning, in looking at this. And so I finally called him, and I said, he said, what do you think? Should we do this? I said, well, I don't know enough. Let me do more research. And that's when I started calling some of these folks up. And I took about 3 months, almost 6 months. And I realized a couple things. One was there's a ton of celebrity spirits, not just in whiskey, but across the spectrum. And the ones that failed were ones that basically they just took the person's name and slapped it on a bottle, and that person disappeared, and they're just getting a percentage, so they don't care. And I said, if we're going to do this, we got to do a couple of things. One, we have to really, it can't be you on the bottle. And he 100% agreed. He didn't want it to be about him. And two, we got to make sure we make the best product we can make. I don't want to go in with a Me Too product and try to convince people they should buy this. I said, we should go in at premium, because that's going to give us the most ability to really differentiate ourselves, and it has the least amount of competition. And so we fast forward another 3 months, and he was getting kind of pissed at me. He said, what takes you so damn long? I said, well, I said, Eric, I don't think you realize how much money this is going to take to do this right. And so I found a general manager, Andrea Myers. She had worked at Heaven's Door and Angel's Envy. And then I really was looking for a master distiller, master blender. And I had interviewed a lot of household names that you would know. And it was kind of fortuitous. Somebody had mentioned Ari, and I had kind of seen him in a Google search when I was looking, and I just cold called him. And we had an amazing call, and it was completely different than any other call that I had. Ari and I kind of geeked out because I have a little bit of a science background. I was supposed to be a doctor, but unfortunately for my parents, they were very disappointed. I decided to go into business. And yeah, that was the Indian parents. It was the biggest disappointment in their lives that I didn't become a doctor. And so we kind of geeked out on the science of making product. And yeah, Ari was telling me about chemical compounds and how it can affect flavor profile. And we were talking about, well, can you test it when you're making these products? And it was fascinating. So I called Eric up. I said, Eric, I want you to interview a couple of these folks. I'm not going to tell you which one I prefer, but I think you're going to be surprised. And so he called these different folks. He called me after each one. And then he spoke to Ari, and he's like, he's our guy. I said, you're right. That's the one.
That's awesome. Ari, when you got that call from Raj, and you had that conversation, were you like, oh no, another celebrity brand? Here we go.
Initially, yes, that was my that was my initial response. I've been in a privileged position where when entrepreneurs have an idea of launching a whiskey brand, sometimes whether they're working with a recruiter or if they're doing their own due diligence to find production partners and whiskey makers, I do on occasion get these calls, and they almost always go the same way. They sort of default to what Raj had said about we've got this celebrity, they have 10 million followers, and we're going to slap their label on a bottle, and that's the concept. And so my knee-jerk reaction always is no, because we have a limited amount of time and bandwidth to make things, to do things, to work with people. I'm very much of the opinion that who we choose to work with in our lives and what we choose to do with our labor is in effect a sacred decision of how we choose to spend our lives. And initially in our conversations with the conversations with Raj and I, and later on with Eric and I, it was very clear that the two of these gentlemen have a different approach to entrepreneurship, to business, to whiskey making than just about anyone else in the industry. And that is what attracted me. And like I said, usually it's a knee-jerk, no thank you, celebrity brands are not particularly interesting. But their idea was not to come out with a celebrity brand at all. It was to highlight creativity and craft and science and to find the intersection of all of these things. So like Raj said, the initial conversations with him, they had a lot of energy. There was a lot of overlap. We talked about wine. We talked about science. And then Eric is a creative mastermind sort of in general, obviously with music and composition and performance, but also with entrepreneurship and business. So the vibe was correct from the very beginning.
And how did that sort of entrepreneurial spirit between the two of you plus Eric kind of bring this into fruition? Raj, after those conversations with Ari, and then Eric said, yeah, Ari's our guy. What were the next steps at that point?
Coming up with the concept. And it took a while. I don't know, Ari, was about 1.5 2 years before we actually launched, from the time we started to the time we finished. We went through a lot of iterations, some pretty crazy ones. If I told you, you would laugh on some of the things, and they were science-based, but we had
like flavored stuff.
No, it was actually
okay, good.
It was actually aging in trucks, and because there's an argument to it, because there's movement, there's heat. You drive, Eric's driving across all over the country.
Little diesel penetration.
Yeah, yeah, we worked on that too, but yeah, there's this whole concept of different climates, and obviously how whiskey gets its flavor and its color is through heat cycling, and what's a better way to have variety and heat than going across the country in different venues. And but anyway, that was one of our many iterations, and what we really can't, I can't remember. I think I was asking Ari about how, why do they put all these grains in the barrel day one and age them at the same time? And and we were kind of going back and forth, and the light bulb hit with the team where we're like, well, let's just use single grains that are aged separately and blend them after. And then we started going out and buying. Ari has great connections in the whiskey world, and we just started buying a ton of inventory. And again, we're Eric and I are blessed to have the pocketbooks to do this, where a lot of small brands I don't think do. So we were able to go out and just find things that we really liked and just buy it and keep it. So we have a massive library of inventory. So we came up with that concept, and I'll let Ari take it from there in terms of how he put it together, because he really created a winner on that one.
Yeah, this actually, one of the reasons I was so excited that we're talking with the both of you is because Whiskey JYPSI, particularly the legacy, the international cross-category blended series that we have. You have an Alchemist bottle with you. That's Legacy Volume 2. The first one was called The Journey, and the idea for this product family really came from two sources. It came from Eric's music directly, and it came from my experience working at bars all over the world. So I've been a winemaker in France, and I've also worked with hospitality groups, setting up restaurants, setting up bars, creating bar menus, creating wine lists. And when Raj and I and Eric were having a conversation about the role grains play in mash bills, and mash bills being one of the ways that whiskey consumers seem to categorize a whiskey, it started a conversation about why are you distilling all of the grains together all the time? Why are you aging all of the grains together? There is a different production style in Canada where they do distill the grains separately and then marry them after the fact. And it reminded me of a bar that I managed where the happy hour, every day the happy hour was we would bring out, and this is the distillers, this is the whiskey blender's main tool in the world, is a 50 milliliter graduated cylinder. This is the tool of the trade for whiskey makers, and I always recommend that bartenders keep them behind the bar as well. So the happy hour at some of the bars that I managed, where customers could come and sit at the bar, and we'd give them a 50 milliliter graduated cylinder, and they could make whatever blend of whiskeys they wanted from the back bar. They could blend ryes and bourbons and single malts and Japanese together, with the caveat that they had to write down the blend that they made in our bar book and then give flavor notes. So the concept of cross-category international blending of bottle-worthy spirits, which is what Legacy has turned into, really began as a happy hour special in bars, and it became a real magnet for other bartenders who would come to happy hour so that they could start blending products on their own, as well as whiskey connoisseurs from around the region. So that was one concept, and it was also from listening to Eric's music. I like Raj, wasn't deeply familiar with Eric's music. I had heard a couple of his songs on the radio, but it was clear from the outset that Eric is a unique composer, musician, singer-songwriter who is incorporating these musical threads from various musical traditions. So yes, there's certainly country music, and you can hear the influence of Hank Williams and Johnny Cash in that entire tradition. But there's also a lot of Bob Seger, who comes from Raj and I's neck of the woods, and there's arena rock, and there's elements of hip hop and blues. And one of the things that Eric does really well is weave together these different musical traditions into his own expression. So we felt like there was a cool parallel between the idea of taking whiskeys from all over the world and blending them in new styles and new ways, whiskeys that had never been blended together, certainly commercially. And it paralleled sort of Eric's creative process. So we were able to link Eric's creative process to our whiskey blending process. And the last step, the last kind of thing that we were having fun with was the legacy products are all blended in the ratios of classic American whiskey mash bills. So the very first product we put out was a 70% essentially corn, 21% rye, 9% malted barley. So a reconstructed mash bill using really nice grain forward spirits. The Alchemist, which is the one you have behind you, is our riff on a 36% rye, or a high rye mash bill. So it's 60% 11-year-old corn whiskey, 36% 18-year-old rye, finished in 3 different barrels, and then 4% Indian single malt. So again, we're playing with the idea of mash bill and playing with the idea of blending international whiskeys from various categories.
And look how cool this is. Look at this.
Oh, look at that.
The
That's
bottle,
super cool.
This is The Alchemist hidden in a false book.
Wow.
It's beautifully done. It looks and feels like an actual book. It's beautiful.
I want to take a quick break, and then when we come back, I'd like to taste the product, because Dad, we both have some, and I'm going to taste it with you. And then, more importantly, Raj, when we come back from the break, we also need to know how many mulligans Eric Church is allowed when you play out on the when you play a match. Okay, we'll be right back.
Unleashed Coffee is a farm-to-cup adventure like no other. Step into a world where exceptional flavors, tantalizing aromas, and rich mouthfeel take you on a journey from your kitchen to the picturesque coffee plantations at origin. At Unleashed Coffee, we believe in fostering connections between coffee lovers and the hardworking farmers behind each bean. Join the journey through our coffee subscription program and gain access to our exclusive online community, connecting you to fellow enthusiasts and the producers of your morning brew. To help you extract every nuance of flavor from our beans, take part in our on-demand coffee brewing courses right in the comfort of your own home. If you are seeking B2B coffee solutions that go beyond just beans, our comprehensive wholesale packages cater to the diverse needs of mobile carts, farm stands, restaurants, cafes, retail shelves, and more. Use coupon code GURUCOFFEE at the checkout to receive 10% off your first purchase at unleashedcoffee.com.
Okay, and now we're back. You don't have to answer the mulligan question, but I'd like
It depends if he's on my team or not.
Oh, right. Okay. I'd like to try our Gypsy Explorer, 103 proof, right? So 51.5% ABV.
That's
it has
cask strength. Yeah.
It's cask strength. It has a really interesting, so 66% corn, 30% rye, 4% malted barley. And then it has a flavor profile on the back, which is, I think, very helpful for people. I don't see that very often. And distilled in Kentucky and Indiana. So, you source your product from Kentucky and Indiana, and then finished, blended, bottled at Whiskey JYPSI in Nashville, which I assume is where you're calling in from, Ari. Are you where are you right now, Ari?
I'm in an undisclosed bunker. No, just kidding.
Okay.
I happen to be in a whiskey warehouse in Michigan, but I am down at the Whiskey JYPSI barrel warehouse in Nashville very regularly.
Yeah.
And the Explorer consists of 2 bourbons aged for 6 years each.
Correct.
Yeah, that's right. In fact, it's a high rye and a low rye blended together to achieve a mid-rye profile. So it's a little different. The base spirit is a little different than most anything out there. And then it goes through a secondary aging with wood from 2 different regions, from American oak from Appalachia and French oak from the Tromsø forest. And there are varieties of American oak, depending on where the American oak grows, whether it's Missouri or the Pacific Northwest or Appalachia or Minnesota, it will have quite different characteristics. So American oak is a broad category. Same with French oak. And so we looked at various forests, very specific forests around France, to determine the right location, the right origin for the wood. And these were the 2 forests that we decided upon.
And the American oak comes from North Carolina, correct?
That's right. Oak stands in North Carolina.
In an area that is close to Eric Church's childhood home?
2 things. Yeah, absolutely. It comes from Eric Church's area, where he still spends half of the year when he's not in Nashville. Appalachia is also in one of the, when we were initially talking about inspirations for the brand in general, one of the things that Eric said he has always been inspired by is the troubadour tradition. The idea of it goes back hundreds and hundreds of years of essentially a new form of poetic expression which are poets who travel around and compose songs of love and their own life. And the country music tradition and the rock and roll tradition come out of the troubadour tradition. And so for Explorer, which is a series, we have multiple releases within the series, we start with a foundation of fully mature American whiskey. And then our take on wood aging, which is a popular trend that many brands do, but our unique take on it is we become hyper specific about where the woods come from and why we chose woods from those areas. And it always begins with quality. So we're selecting the finest woods to influence the character of the whiskey. But for the first Explorer, we also wanted to honor the troubadour tradition. And so we chose 2 locations that not only have world-class wood, but also tie into the troubadour tradition. So the troubadours initially began hundreds and hundreds of years ago in France, in the Trancé forest, which, if you're a wine person these days, you know the Trancé forest produces the oak barrels for Bordeaux. And to stand up to liquid, to wine of that depth and character, you need oak from a place like the Trancé forest. So we wanted to make sure that we incorporated some of this historic wood that ties back to the origins of the troubadour tradition, but also incorporate wood from the cradle of the troubadour tradition in the United States, which is Appalachia. So this is sort of an old world and new world homage to the troubadour tradition.
Well, now we want to talk about the actual whiskeys that we've been discussing. We really need to taste these.
Yes, we have been. We have. That's exactly what we've been doing, Dad. Where have you been?
Tasting.
Okay. Yes, I've tasted it, but what I wanted to know, if I may, Raj, as far as once the juice and the bottle and all of that was created, was there a specific strategy that you were following to bring it to market? And also, how do you want the consumers to consume it versus the trade? All of that stuff.
So I'll talk about the tiers of the business and the products, and that's really how I think about it in terms of for the consumer. But we started obviously with Legacy, which was a premium, ultra premium price point, 200. We thought launching Explorer would be a nice way to get more people into the brand, and that's in the 60s. And we have another product coming out in February, I believe, maybe March, which will be even more approachable. They'll be in the 40s. And to me, that's a great way to get a lot of different people into the brand that might not be able to afford the more expensive ones.
So that comes out in March, you said, right?
Yeah, so we're trying to decide the exact launch, but somewhere around March.
That would be good. I'm just thinking from a bar perspective, that as far as the cost goes, and for cocktails, that's definitely more approachable. Yeah,
that's right. It was. When we were launching the brand, we knew we'd have a problem on premise because it was too expensive for on premise when you think about their markup. And so Explorer got a little closer, but it's still a little expensive. This next one is going to be a lot easier, and you feel a little guilty blending a $200 bottle. So this one will be made for either drinking straight, because it will be very smooth, and I can let Ari talk about that, or blending.
Well, Eric even the 200. Yeah, sorry, even that $200 one. We did a pop-up. We do pop-ups across the country. We did one at the Bellagio at their kind of speakeasy called the Vault. And they have sort of a reserve list of cocktails, and they use $200, $300 spirits in their cocktails. So I could see that there. But in I'm Vegas, sorry, yes. Yes, in Vegas, exactly, yeah. But I cut you off. You were just about to say Eric Church drinks.
Oh, but Eric, likes drinking whiskey with Coke, and so it's a little difficult to justify drinking, although as an owner you can do it, I guess. But drinking legacy with Coke, you kind of
that's classic.
There's a lot.
That's classic.
Too many flavors in there to dilute it down with Coke. But
that's also been featured in lyrics. I'm drinking the whiskey and Coke in the back truck. I don't know.
A drink in my hand is one of my favorite songs.
Yeah, my kids like that song too. They're a little young to like it, but they like it.
Right. Also, I did want to say briefly that I've been tasting these quite a bit, and they improve dramatically with aeration. Just wanted to mention that.
It's funny you say that, Ari. You should talk about that, because as a novice relative to Ari, I pointed that out to him. I said, Ari, this is fascinating. I tried it over, 30 minutes, 30 seconds, 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And why is that? And Ari can explain. I was fascinated by his explanation for it.
Yeah, these are complex whiskeys, especially Legacy with the 3 different 10-plus-year-old components. Benefits from aeration in the same way that a wine that may have been in a bottle for 10 years or more also benefits from aeration. There's chemical changes that happen when oxygen is introduced into this liquid, especially when there's as many different compounds floating around like in this blend. So not only does it change over time as air essentially creates chemical reactions, but if you add even a little bit of water and change the ethanol water ratio, compounds and aromas will come out of solution, or ice will do the same thing. So these are really all of the products that we make, whether it's because of the secondary wood aging or because the complexity of the spirits and the blend, evolve in the glass. It's a story that sort of opens up in the glass. So we encourage you to sit with it, spin around, let the air get in there, see how it affects the aroma. Add a little bit of ice, or a little bit of water, and these spirits, like all complex spirits, evolve in the glass, and you'll have a different experience between your first sip and your last sip.
And Dad, I'm just noticing the glass that you're using to taste, and then the glass that I have. So I have a Glencairn glass, and you have what kind of glass?
I'm using, actually, both of them are cognac tasting glasses, because I love them. I love the shapes, and I think they really highlight spirits very nicely, whether it's cognac or whiskey or rum. Very good. And I'll tell you, the Explorer is really coming into its own and becoming much smoother and more delicate than it was just even a few minutes ago.
Yes, I'm getting some berry notes that I didn't have before. Like that, I guess that dry.
Yeah, the Explorer is quite. Yeah, the dry fruit comes through, and the Explorer is pretty smooth for an 103 proof spirit. One of the reasons is that's a choice that we made in the production process, which is when we're allowing the spirits to marry to meld in a tank. Most distilleries will close the tank to keep everything inside. We actually crack the top of the tank and we allow some of the more volatile compounds, which are the compounds that tend to burn the nostril. Those more volatile compounds, we let the spirits marry for at least 72 hours. That will blow off some of those more volatile compounds and creates a smoother spirit. It takes longer. It takes a little bit more babysitting than your traditional harvest a barrel, bottle a barrel. It's an added step in the process, but we think it yields a better product.
And normally I wouldn't expect a 6-year-old bourbon to be as smooth as this one. Really, really good. Really.
It's really delicious. And, we always wish that we had more time to chat with you guys and our guests in general, but our time has come to a close. But I do want to say that Raj, my dad, and I are available to play a foursome with you and Eric anytime. Anytime.
Are you golfers?
A little bit.
I need 100 mulligans.
Okay.
About 100. And a bunch of boxes of balls.
18,
and a lot of balls.
We have plenty of Whiskey JYPSI balls.
And whiskey, we'd love to. And we're also available to kind of, just go on tour with Eric and the whiskey, personal mixologists. But
I'll fit right in with my hat.
You will fit right in. Well, thank you so much. Best of luck with the product. And at some point we'd love to hang out in person and do some more stuff together. So thanks so much.
That'd be great. We'd appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the time.
Raj and Ari,
Thanks for having
you
us.
so much. It was wonderful meeting you both and discussing Gypsy whiskey with you. Thank you.
Ditto. Thank you.
The Cocktail Guru presents Cocktail Commentary with Jeffrey Pogash. Sit back and enjoy the story of the flowing bowl.
Hello, my friends.
and welcome back to Cocktail Commentary. I know it's hard to imagine what life was like before we had cocktails, but my friends, there was such a moment in time. And what a fun and glorious moment it must have been, really. In fact, it was a simpler life, less complicated, and in some ways, more satisfying. There were fewer choices. Today, when you go to a bar, you have to wade knee-deep in this martini or that martini or the teeny-weeny martini. You know what I mean. Some of you already know that Jerry Thomas, aka Professor Jeremiah Thomas, is the one who first codified the cocktail in his 1862 book, How to Mix Drinks or the Bon Vivant's Companion. This is the cocktail lover's Bible, since it's the first time that cocktail recipes were published in book form. We know that there were most likely cocktail recipes written on scraps of paper, but not available in a book for the world to see until renowned bartender Jerry Thomas came along. So exactly what type of book with drink recipes was available before 1862? People drank, right? Yeah, they did. They had to get their recipes from somewhere. Interestingly, a woman, that's right, I said a woman, by the name of Mrs. Isabella Beeton, published a world-famous groundbreaking work called Mrs. Beeton's Book of Household Management in 1861, a year before Jerry Thomas's book, in which she did include a few recipes for spirit-based beverages, along with non-alcoholic drinks. But the word cocktail is nowhere to be found, of course. We have to go back to 1827 to find a book devoted entirely to mixed drink recipes. Its title is Oxford Nightcaps, and yes, it was published for Oxford University. The subtitle is, quote, being a collection of receipts used for making beverages in the university. These are recipes used when dignitaries, such as members of the clergy, would come to pay a visit to the university. Fittingly enough, the first recipe in the book is called Bishop, which is a hot spiced wine. But it appears that the students at Oxford enjoyed their nightcaps as well and were quite discriminating in their drinking habits. It is to be presumed that some of these recipes came from the students themselves. The beverage that dominates the book is one that permeated British society at that time. Punch. That's right, before there were cocktails, there was punch. It just so happens that the first written reference to punch was in 1632. That's how far back it goes, more than 200 years before the word cocktail entered our vocabulary. Punch at this time was a highfalutin drink. Yeah, it was considered fancy and ceremonial. Punch making was a ritual among upper-class British gents. I'm not talking about the punch from my youth made with Yago, sangria, Kool-Aid, and a hefty dose of ginger ale. Nope, not that kind. The punch drinks found in Oxford nightcaps are proper punches. They were made with the finest ingredients, the best rum or the best brandy, probably from the Cognac region of France rather than generic brandy. For centuries, English gentlemen bonded over the flowing bowl, as it was known, and passed down the art of punch making from one generation to the next. So what exactly was this phenomenon known as punch? Allow me to quote a little ditty from the aforementioned Oxford nightcaps. Whene'er a bowl of punch we make, four striking opposites we take, the strong, the small, the sharp, the sweet, together mixed most kindly meet. And when they happily unite, the bowl is pregnant with delight. I bet you didn't think that you'd be learning about pregnant bowls in this episode, but here we have it, a punch bowl that is so full of deliciousness that it squeals with delight, making all who partake of it very happy indeed. The word punch most likely derives from the Hindu word for the number 5, panch, or the Persian word punj. Why the number 5? Simple. It takes 5 ingredients to make a proper punch. Brandy or rum were the usual spirits, along with citrus juice, lemons or oranges, sugar, water, and a spice. Since India or possibly Pakistan appears to be the birthplace of punch, it is highly probable that tea was the required spice. And voila, we have the 5 essential components of a punch. In the American colonies, punch was a very popular drink, and it flowed liberally. At one community meeting in New England in the year 1785, 80 men attended and consumed 30 bowls of punch before the meeting and 40 more bowls that evening during dinner. Eventually, colonial wives banded together to put a stop to these raucous events, but the punch bowl remained an effective tool of persuasion at the polls on election day. You know, the philosophy was if you ply the voter with punch, he might be convinced to vote for the candidate of your choice. Eventually, the practice was banned during elections, but punch continued to thrive in various forms. And now you'll learn the rest of the story. In the 19th century, America's wealthy elite spent a great deal of time hosting the most lavish dinners imaginable at restaurants that were created specifically to cater to this ritzy clientele. The Astors, the Rockefellers, the Vanderbilts, J.P. Morgan, and the Carnegies, just to name a few, flocked to the palaces of gastronomy like Delmonico's, the Waldorf Astoria, and Sherry's, where great food was served and guests were often treated to performances that would rival the spectacular and glitzy Las Vegas floor shows of today. You don't believe me? Punch was served at all of these events, mostly a frozen Roman punch topped with a dollop of meringue, served as individual cocktails during the intermezzo, a palate cleanser between courses. In the Gilded Age of 1896, the infamous Seeley Brothers dinner was held in a very private room at Sherry's restaurant, owned by Louis Sherry, whose name became synonymous with fancy ice cream when I was growing up. The dinner, a bachelor party, featured the exotic dancer Little Egypt and her troupe as the guest headliner. For those of you who don't recognize the name, Little Egypt is the young lady who made the Hoochie Coochie famous. Before the evening ended, New York's finest police officers raided the joint. In the chaos, Little Egypt escaped and was nowhere to be found, but she ended up suing the Seeley brothers for non-payment of her fee, and it is said that the brothers were never able to overcome the scandalous publicity. Exactly who were these guys? As it turns out, Herbert and Duncan had quite a lineage to live up to. It seems that their middle name was Barnum. Yes, like P.T. Barnum, the great showman and founder of the circus, who was their grandfather. And now you know the rest of the story.
That's a wrap. If you enjoy what we do, please rate, review, and subscribe to the show and our newsletter. To watch or listen to today's episode or to see the show notes, visit thecocktailgurushow.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, YouTube, X, Instagram, or TikTok. The Cocktail Guru Show is produced by First Reel Entertainment and is available via YouTube, Spotify, Zencaster, Apple, Amazon, EatsDrinksTV.com, Galaxy Global on Comcast, and wherever you enjoy your favorite shows.